Okay, now we move on to some other ones that are not really talked about very much, but are very, very powerful. And I would strongly suggest that students start using these. These are sort of the basic ones we teach our year 11 and 12 students to use because they're really, really good and they really raise your writing. It shows the marker, hey, I actually know all of these techniques. This is how smart I am. And it allows you to show off a bit. Other than that, it really does act as a segue to your analysis. For example, if you are talking about, for example, here, the first one is fast cuts. If you know that that's a technique, a valid technique, the fact that the film scenes keep chopping and changing really fast to create tension, things are going on, you're flicking between scenes really, really quickly in a battle or a car crash or something really fast paced, that'll change your analysis. You'll talk about that. You'll talk about how there is tension there, what that implies, things like that. So having really good techniques will also raise your analysis. Okay, so like I said, fast cuts in a film, if you're, for example, in a car chase and the scenes keep chopping and changing back and forth between the two cars and the shots are really, really quick, you're really focusing on the tension there. There is stress there. There is a lot of action going on, and those fast cuts really do emphasize that. Like I said, for comprehension, you don't need that. So let's move on. Focal point. Focal point refers to the main area of interest, which draws attention. So here, we can clearly see that the focal image is this man on the bookshelf. So you can talk about the bookshelf being a focal point and the man himself also being a focal point, right? Because your attention is instantly drawn to this bit here, right? The next one is leading and vector lines. So if you've ever studied visual arts, they do draw on this a lot as well. So vector lines or leading lines, they're both the same thing. They are lines which direct the viewer's eye to a certain place. So here, it's really obvious, so you can see for yourself. Look at these lines at the edge of the road here. They point you towards the end. But also look at the wall. We've got so many lines in the wall, in the texturing of the wall, and also in the doors. Here, there are lines. So everything, even the top of the walls, so everything is pointing towards this end of the photo, this middle end corridor thing. If you were analyzing this photo, you'd probably also talk about lighting. As you can see, there's a light at the end. But in terms of vector lines, they really do push your eye instantly towards the end. And different photos will have different vector lines. Vector lines don't always have to be straight. Most of the time they are. But sometimes your eye might be following the curve of a snake or something like that towards maybe an apple or whatever it is. So leading lines can be very powerful. Okay, with color, color always sounds like the boring, simple technique. It's not, if you know how to use it. For example, this is a HSC text, a past HSC paper, an actual official HSC paper. And look at it. I think if you did not mention color in your analysis, you would be in trouble because it's so important. Look at it. We've got this vibrant, beautiful city, and then you've got this guy here who's clearly not feeling it, right? So when you talk about color, you don't just say the use of color. That is boring. But you want to use it to raise your writing. So for example, you would say the use of vibrant, bright colors to depict the city compared to the dull, monochromatic colors used in the man, right? So you extend color. Don't just say the word color, but tell me about them. Are they bright? Are they vibrant? Maybe the photo just uses brown tones because color connects to tone. So if there's just one scale of color, you want to talk about that as well. If there's contrast, for example, in this photo, I would definitely talk about the contrasting of colors. And that is a huge thing, right? It shows things. It has its own meaning in terms of, you know, he clearly does not enjoy this city. He does not feel like he belongs, right? Things like that. So you can extend color and make it more powerful. Visual metaphor is another one that I really encourage students to use. Not many people know about this, but it is actually very good because most photos, right, will put in an image, a symbol that represents something else. So being able to refer to that using the term visual metaphor is so good. For example, here, look at this Star Trek poster. It says Discovery at the bottom. And the thing is, eyes are usually used to represent knowledge or enlightenment. In this case, it's enlightenment and discovery. And maybe you could link that to finding new things, exploring new places, right? But this eye here is the visual metaphor, and you could extend that onwards. Object positioning. So if you're ever not sure, if you want to refer to where an object is or where something's been placed in the image and you're not sure how to do it, you want to talk about the object positioning. That's the jargon we use. So for example, the positioning of this fish in the middle of the city says something. It's to create interest, it's to convey a message depending on what it is, things like that. So you want to refer to positioning. Similar jargon is subject matter. So if you're not sure about how to refer to something, you can use the term subject matter. But just learning over time these small phrases, these small words to show markers that you really have control over analysis of visual text. Moving on, so gestures. Gestures are quite obvious. You can see that this guy is not happy, both because of facial features, facial expressions, sorry, and his gesturing. Look at it. He's pointing at him. He's not happy. This guy, if you talk about him, it would be, I'd probably refer to posture, body language, to show that he's obviously very uncomfortable. Okay, so gestures themselves can also show emotion. All right, when we talk about sizing for images, we use the term scale. We don't really talk about size. Scale is the correct word. Why? Because scale is relative. So you would say the use of scale in this image conveys how this man has positioned himself atop a huge cliff in order to be able to look down on the world, to see everything beneath him, right? So scale is about the sizing of things compared to each other, right? So if you want to talk about one object, you could talk about, the huge size of this building. But in terms of scale, scale lets you refer to multiple things in comparison to each other. So I always say, refer to scale. Eye contact and facial expressions. I've briefly covered facial expressions and it should be pretty obvious. But in terms of eye contact, they do different things depending on the text. For example, this man here, even though it might be a bit awkward or strange, the eye contact here is supposed to draw you in because he's looking at us, the viewer, which means it creates interest. We want to know, what is he doing? Why is he looking at me? What are you up to? Right? And I can see, oh, okay, maybe he's up to some exploring. Eye contact will also allow us to relate to him, connect to him a bit better and say, oh, actually, I do want to do some discovery, or maybe I want to see more about what he's doing. Okay, so when we're looking at each other, it's about that relationship, that connection again. Here, we're not really trying to connect with the characters. In this right photo, they are looking at each other, not at me, which means what? In this photo, well, it's to show alarm. Look at them. Their facial expressions and eye contact clearly shows me, oh no, they are very worried for this guy here, right? It creates this sense of tension, this urgency, and this sense of danger because they're all looking at him because he's fallen. So depending on the text, eye contact will do different things. All right, framing patterns. You won't always see this. It's not very, very common, but it's good to have up your sleeve because it can be used very effectively. For example, let's talk about this image first. Because there are books everywhere, these books become a framing device. And what does that do? The effect here is to show that there are books absolutely everywhere. This place is filled to the brim with books, right? But I can extend that down to this image here for more complex analysis. So this ice here also acts as a framing device because it's framing, literally framing the photo. And what does that do? Well, it shows you that the conditions there are terrible. There is ice absolutely everywhere. It shows you that this man is, has really placed himself into dangerous, rugged conditions. And this photo also gives you a good example of what patterns do. The fact that there's patterns in the ice emphasizes how crazy the conditions are, how rugged it is, and how difficult it's going to be for him to climb them, right? Climb the hills. And finally, shapes. So shapes you might not use as much, but it's good for photos like this, where shapes have been inverted or played with. This is a very famous photo. If you've done visual arts in the past, you'll know about this. But as you can see, the clocks are melting, and the clocks are definitely not their usual shape. So this sort of this play on shapes creates interest, right? And the viewer's going to say, what is happening here? What is going on, right? So sometimes you might want to draw on the use of shapes or the inversion of shapes to create image or to send a message, right? Maybe here the message is time is relative, time is not important, things like that. All right. So these are the main techniques that I would teach students to draw on in their first instance of learning about comprehension techniques, especially for year 11 and 12. So as you get towards your HSC, you want to know things like this because you have to be able to draw on more than camera angle and more than camera distance. So have these up your sleeve and make sure you show the marker, hey, I know all of these techniques. That being said, there's more to gaining marks than just listing techniques. So you really have to know how to apply these. And that will be in another video, which I'll do soon. In terms of how you apply these techniques, what are the effects of these techniques on this specific text? Okay, so you need to know how to go beyond just listing them and what they do to the text itself. So if you're interested, if you want to see how we apply these techniques to different texts, do stay tuned and do find that video when it comes out. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you've learned a lot. I certainly have. Once I have gone through all of this, even my brain hurts. So I'm hoping that your brain hurts as well, that you've learned a lot and that you really enjoyed the video. So if you have, stay tuned and feel free to subscribe. Thank you.